Hello once again. You are very, very welcome here. I have here with me Rachel Pollack, and I'm very pleased to be with her once again to talk a little bit more. And I'm Joao Caldeira. I'm the founder of the Tarot House in Lisbon, and Rachel is going to be here with us very, very, very soon. And tonight we are going to talk about shadows in terms of life, in terms of tarot. And so I picked this book, Tarot of Perfection, and there's this story, this tale that is about a pickpocket, the pickpocket tale. The idea of Rachel, the idea of the shadow and the light in terms of life, what does this sound to you? The idea of shadow and light. Is that always shadow? Is there always light?
Well, it depends a little bit on how we interpret the idea of light and also of shadow, for that matter. The Jungian idea of shadow is that we want to see what we want to see. So we see ourselves in a certain way, and we kind of repress parts of ourselves we don't want to look at, we don't want to see. So in a sense, we put them in the shadow. So in a sense, we stand in the light, and behind us is the shadow of our other selves. To some extent, of course, in the older way of looking at things, you have light and dark rather than light and shadow. And the question then becomes, is there actually darkness? Are there things that are not just what I consciously don't want to look at about myself, or are there things that are at some other level of evil, for instance? And I tend to accept very basically the modern view, but I also respect the older view, that perhaps the shadows hide something that is not just me. There's not just my repressed self. That maybe there are really darker things that have to be dealt with. Another way to look at it is cards that we don't like.
Yeah.
As it turns out, tomorrow I'm going to be giving a talk on a part of a teaching I'm doing here, and I may do some of it also when we're in Portugal, because it's actually a very good practice to do, of looking at the cards that we don't like in the tarot. And these can be called, many people call these the shadow cards, and we call them the problem cards. And to some extent, both these terms make them a little bit safe. Oh, they're just a problem to be solved. Oh, it's just a shadow, because the idea of shadow is sort of insubstantial. You have your body, and then you have just the shadow, which is nothing.
Yeah.
And actually,
and do you think that the cards have this shadow? Some cards are only shadows, or they have always shadow and light?
I think that for each of us, there are some cards that are going to be troubling in some way. And what's interesting to me is they're not going to be the same cards to everybody. And part of what I want to do with the class, and as I say, hopefully we'll also have a chance to do it in Portugal, maybe, even though we have many other things to do, but we'll see. But part of it is for each person to go through their deck and to try to pick out the cards that bother them. And to pick them out not by what they're supposed to mean. So in other words, you don't automatically take death because that's a difficult card. You don't automatically take the devil. Instead, like you, for instance, you find the Tower card very meaningful, and the Devil card also.
Yeah,
Many people, officially, those would be seen as problem cards or shadow cards, But I might choose the Temperance card, because sometimes to me, the Temperance card can be a kind of inhuman calm. That the angel is too detached from physicality, which is actually a very ancient view of angels. Yeah, I was writing about this and thinking how our modern view of angels, which accept these, kindly little helpers, like these, sweet little beings that flutter around us and try to make life better for us all the time. This is a very modern view. It's probably like from the 18th or 19th century, no earlier than that, because older times people didn't like angels. Angels were not the friends of human beings. They were God's servants, but they were not our friends. They didn't like us, and we didn't like them in older times. But the point is, you choose the cards that bother you, and you especially try to choose them in some kind of like very strong reaction, and then you explore that. You explore what it is that's disturbing to you about it. So you're uncovering things about the card, you're uncovering things about yourself. And I got into the subject because I was answering an announcement that someone had made. Thalassa in San Francisco, I think you've had some dealings with Thalassa. And Thalassa wrote how she was going to teach a class about the problem cards in the tarot, but she lost her voice and couldn't do it. So we were all kind of joking about that, somehow these problem cards took her voice away. They didn't want her to talk about them. And then I started saying, well, perhaps you should, placate them the way people refer to the fair folk or the fairies in the Celtic tradition because they're these very frightening beings. They're not evil, but they're elemental forces that are not friends of humanity. And so people try to say nice things about them. And then in ancient Greece, they had these terrifying beings called the Erinyes, the Furies. And they called them the kindly ones, the Eumenides, as a way to placate them and hope they keep them away. So I thought, okay, well, let's think about that. So we're going to change our fiends into our friends. In English, you just add one letter to change the word fiend into friend. And we're going to try to make friends out of the cards that are frightening to us. So there's a kind of dark and light in the tarot and a shadow and things. But let me ask you, what about that story, The Pickpocket's Destiny, struck you in this way?
It struck me because it's very interesting, because it starts as a pickpocket and it goes up and up. It's going bandit, it's growing. It has then he starts robbing, and then it starts robbing other people and becomes a bandit, and then it goes further and further into the dark side somehow.
Yes, that's true. Yeah.
And then he suddenly has a group of bandits, is a leader of bandits, and then he becomes a leader of light. He has an army and becomes a leader of light, and then he finally allows his country to be free again from the invaders, the dark invaders. So this man, who is just a simple man, who is just struggling for his life, robbing just to survive, he becomes more and more important somehow in the dark side. But then all of a sudden, all this darkness becomes light. And that's what I think it's marvelous about this story. This going on, it just pickpockets, and then it starts robbing houses, and then it's just assaulting people in the roads, and then it goes on and on and on. Just asking the oracle, what should he do? And the oracle it tells him to do these kind of things. And that is amazing.
Yeah, what's enjoyable to me about that story, but I had so much fun with it, is it's about the idea of oracles and destiny. So he keeps going to the oracle to make a better man of himself. And each time the oracle tells him to do something worse. So first he's trying to survive in a very difficult time. And he goes to the oracle, hoping it'll tell him something noble to do. And the oracle says, be a pickpocket. And he's horrified. That's such a terrible thing to do. But he goes and he listens to the oracle. Because in his world, you don't deny the oracle, Because then he gets sick of being a pickpocket. He goes back to the oracle and he says to her, "Oh, I hate this being a pickpocket. Isn't there something better?" She says, "Yes, of course. You shouldn't be a pickpocket. You should be a thief. You should rob people's houses." So he's even more upset, but he does it. And each time he goes back, she tells him to do something worse, Then as you say, then finally he ends up having a whole army of bandits. Because the oracle has just taken him step by step to this point. Because he lives in a country that's been invaded and his country has been taken over. And that's why he originally came, because there's no opportunities for a beggar in a country that's been invaded. So finally he goes back and he says to this old woman oracle, "What should I do now?" And then she sort of rises up and becomes a goddess and says, now you and your army of bandits will throw out the invaders. And he does, and becomes the king. And the curious thing is, this is based on a true story. In India, a friend of mine spent a long time in India. She told me this story. It's a true story that became a Sufi story about exactly what you're talking about. How
Yes.
sometimes we have to follow our destiny into darkness to emerge into light, you know? So, but the true story is this portion of India was invaded by a very powerful empire. And the leader of the rebellion was a thief, he was a bandit. And he had, in fact, acquired an army of bandits, and that's who overthrew the invaders. Which, curiously, in a certain way, can be said to be happening in Portugal, I suppose. I have
Yeah.
very little sympathy for the Taliban, who I think are despicable. But to some extent, that's what happens all the time. Not in Portugal, Afghanistan. Maybe it's
Afghanistan,
you
not
what you
well.
need
In
in
Portugal,
Portugal. Maybe
we
in
have
Portugal you need
our
this.
yeah,
You
we
you
have
have
our
biker bandits. You have
problems.
in
We
Europe,
have our
Portugal. You have the
problems too.
bikers who are the bandits. But anyway, but in Afghanistan, this is what always happens. In Afghanistan, these empires invade: the British Empire, the Russian Empire, and now the American Empire, um, with their own intentions. And the people overthrow them have tended to be the warlords. They've tended to be the bandits, really. So this thing actually happens. But
Yeah.
in the story, he keeps having to deny his desire to do something pure and noble. But that's the only way to build up his power. Um, but it's a scary thing because if you start believing this, if you start telling yourself, well, I have to go into the darkness to build up my power, you can do terrible things.
Yeah.
You can fall in love with that idea. And I've known people who get into tarot and they start dressing in black all the time and looking mysterious and this is kind of okay, they're just playing a game. But then they start being serious and they start, thinking they have to become awful people
Yeah.
to get truly mystical power. And that's a kind of craziness.
Because darkness somehow is very attractive, at
Yeah.
least for some people. We think that light is only the thing that attracts people,
Yeah.
but darkness can be very attractful as well.
Yeah. Hmm.
I was going to ask you, in the cards, there are cards that are more dark for some people and the others are
Hmm.
more light for others, as you
Right.
were talking
Yeah.
before, and that is not just equal for everybody. Some
No, they're not the
because
same card.
and not the same way, because there are people who can enjoy, for instance, the hermit, and other people don't enjoy it at all. For them, the
Right.
hermit
Yeah.
is terrible.
Yes.
But others, they think the hermit is great, is
And some
fantastic.
people hate the lovers, because they don't
Yes.
want to have that. They're not interested
Hmm.
in that in their lives. And maybe there are people who are compulsive about relationships. And if they get the lover's card, to them, it's, oh, again, I can't stay away from it. I can't be a hermit. I always fall into these relationships. So it's going to be different for everybody. You can't, you as the reader cannot say which cards are the good cards and which are the bad cards. Because it really depends. There's a
Yeah.
line in Hamlet, I think, where he says, there's nothing good or bad, but thinking makes it so. And he may be
Yeah.
wrong. Of course, he may be completely wrong, because Hamlet's often wrong. But it's an interesting line. In the tarot, there's some extent that's true. There's no card that's good or bad except for you.
Yeah. And that's the idea. Then we have to be to if one of us is afraid of one card, then maybe we have to deal with that card and to learn more about that card and to learn more about the feelings, the meanings of that card. So do you think that's something that we should do? Go, if we are afraid of some cards, we should get help somehow, because it might be frightening. But then we might go deeper into that meaning, and then feel
Yeah,
free, and then again feel free.
yeah.
Um,
I think that part of the problem is when we try to do that, we have the goal of feeling free. We have the goal of solving the problem.
mhm,
That's why I have a bit of trouble with this idea that they're problem cards or that they're shadow, because that's so easily taken care of. You
mhm,
shine a light on it and the shadow's gone. If it's a problem, you fix it.
mhm,
But
mhm,
that's not you. That's a solution. So you're not really going deeply into what that's about for you.
mhm, mhm.
And I think that's kind of interesting
Yeah.
to look at, how do you find out what really is it? And sometimes you may need help. Sometimes if the situation is drastic enough, you may actually need to do that with therapists. So if some card really, really scares you, or some kind really disturbs you, then maybe you want to work with someone. But usually you can do it yourself. You can say, okay, just what's about this card? Just write it down, talk to someone about it, do a reading, make up a story about it, and see what it is. If you let your imagination go, then you'll come up with something, maybe.
So I have this idea that somehow we must be aware. That's something that's important. I think awareness is important. But another thing that I think it's important is sometimes we go from light to darkness as well, because we are so proud of what we can do, so proud of our capacities, that sometimes we go from light to be arrogant, to have the idea that we can do everything, and then there's this arrogance, and that can be being attracted to the dark side. From light we go to darkness.
Well, there's a famous tradition in Kabbalah among the Jews that says that someone, for them it's usually a man, so they say a man cannot study Kabbalah until he is at least 40 years old and has children. And this is because to be stable. And this wasn't always the case. It's a modern idea. Where it came from was there was what they call a false messiah, a man named Shabtai Zvi in, I think, the 17th century, maybe the 18th, I'm not sure now, 17th, I guess, who set himself up as a messiah, and a lot of people followed him, and it almost destroyed Judaism. So after that, the rabbis said, okay, this material is not very safe. And the problem is that if you're not really as stable as you think you are, then your attraction to all of this is personal power, and it can even be the attraction is just to feel better about yourself. So like somebody, for instance, has not a very good job, and doesn't have a good relationship, but if he's secretly pursuing the dark side, then he's better than everybody else. He may go to work each day and be ignored by all his coworkers, and no one invites him out to lunch, but he doesn't care because he's doing these spells, and he's following the dark path. So that's like a joke, but I mean, that's the kind of thing that can happen in subtle ways to people, to get attracted for the wrong reasons to things. Yeah. At the same time, of course, the reason why they say, what the rabbis or the gurus or the masters, all say that you have to do this for the right reason, you have to be stable, is because there is a real power. I mean, the devil stands the guardian at the threshold of tremendous power. It's the 15th card. It's the start of the final group of 7, which, immediately afterwards is the lightning of the tower. So it's not just, psychological. There's a real tremendous power there.
Yeah. On the other side, we have the world. We have the devil on one side, and then on the other side, we have the world.
Yeah. Son of if God, you can make it through the devil, and then the moon a little bit later, you emerge into the light of the sun, and then you have a clear path, in a certain sense, to the world, which is enlightenment.
So here,
but you can't bypass the devil and the tower and the moon.
Yeah. Some people want to do that, and so they don't enter the other cards, the bright cards, the right way, because some people want to go directly to the world or directly to the star, and never have to face the devil, never have to face the tower, never have to face so many other cards. So we can expect you here in Portugal to talk about this light and shadow and the cards. Okay.
Yes, it's exciting. It's an exciting process.
Yes, I'm excited with the idea, actually.
Okay.
I'm very excited with that idea. Do you think that is there anything else that you would like to tell us about light and shadow?
Well, for one thing, I think we can never get rid of the shadow. There's another, again, going back to the Jewish tradition, there's a wonderful parable about some rabbis who decide that they are going to get rid of the evil urge, as it's called, which is basically the dark side of the tree of life. You have the tree of life, and in the Golden Dawn Tarot occult tradition, the tree of life is a symbol of different things. But on another level in Kabbalah, it's kind of one version, and there's also a shadow version of the tree of life. Some people call it the tree of death, and it's attached to the tree of life. And so this group of rabbis said, okay, humanity should not be subject to these dark things, these dark urges. So we're going to do this powerful magic and get rid of it. So they do this powerful meditation ritual, and they wipe out the evil impulse, as it's called, Yetzer Hara, the evil impulse. So in a certain sense, they sever the shadow from the light. They cut off the tree of death from the tree of life. And they're very happy at first because they've saved the world from evil, you know? And then they discover the plants aren't growing, no one's getting pregnant, no one's in love. And they realize that life cannot exist without the darkness. The evil impulse is also the impulse to be alive. And if you try to be pure all the time, then you can't be living. Then you want to be like an angel. Angels are not living beings. You know, they're sort of just projections. This is why the famous parable, you know, that God says to the angels, when that God creates Adam and says, okay, angels, bow down. And that's what starts the famous war in heaven. They say, bow down to that creature of dirt. We're angels. We're not going to bow down. But God says, no, this creature of dirt is superior to you because he has free will. And you don't. Yeah. You're just projections. You're just angels. You're just projections, you know? Yeah. So this is the essence of who we are, to have this dark side as well as a light side. And the question is, how do we use the energy and not be destructive?
Yeah. So we're going somehow expecting other conversations we're going to have, and here also in Portugal, in your course, to go deeper into this dark and light, because I think it's a very important subject in terms of tarot and in terms in life in general, because for me tarot is one way of understanding life. And so yeah, you were going to say.
I'll tell you, sort of a joke came to me. Got a little bit of a joking story about someone who goes to a tarot reader and the devil comes up, you know, and the tarot reader says, oh, well, this is the devil. This can represent the darkness, but we have to learn to face this, you know. And the client says, oh, yes, I understand. It's, you know, it's nothing really bad. It's just we only think it's bad. Says, are you kidding? It's the devil. What are you talking about? You can't just dismiss these things. You know, you can't just immediately solve the problem. You have to look at it, you know.
Yeah, so we are going to do that. I think it's a very interesting subject, so we are going to go deeper and deeper into it. And Rachel, we are going to meet again in person once again, very soon, in almost a couple of days. And I'm excited about that idea of having you here in Lisbon, and having the possibility of everybody in the world to see us here in Lisbon. That's going to be
wonderful,
amazing. So thank you once again, Rachel.
My pleasure.
It was really great. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye, Joao. Thank you.
Bye.